Welcome to the Meant to Be Outdoors podcast, where our goal is to connect listeners to the great outdoors, with hosts Brian Hoffmeyer and Ben Brandell.
I'm host Ben Brandell, owner of Meant to Be Outdoors, instructor of outdoor skills, and passionate about personal growth.
I'm host Brian Hoffmeyer, wildlife biologist and avid outdoorsman. Welcome to the Meant to Be Outdoors podcast. It's Myth Monday. We're your hosts, Ben and Brian, and today we're talking poisonous snakes. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce my host, Mr. Ben Brandell. Ben, what do you have to say when you hear the word poisonous snake?
It takes me back to the day when you and I were conservation education instructors. And
Some good times there.
It was. A lot of awesome animals that we got to work with and take care of. But one of them being snakes. I personally always try to take a snake to every program because they're powerful.
The reaction was amazing every time you pull out a snake, whether positive or negative.
Absolutely. And, because of the interactions we had with snakes and being able to teach people about snakes, a lot of people would ask you and I, they would send us text messages of pictures. Is this a poisonous snake? And I always wanted to just quickly send a text right back and be like, well, how many poisonous snakes do we even have?
Yeah, that was a question I asked. I think I got it from you in almost every program that I used a snake in. I'd ask the class, whether 100 people or 5 people, how many poisonous snakes do we have right here in Missouri where we live?
Yeah, how many poisonous snakes are there in the United States? And that led me to begin to shiver as I heard people calling it poisonous snakes, because there is no such thing as a poisonous snake in the United States, in Missouri, anywhere you live here.
Zero poisonous snakes.
Correct.
Right.
Because
so
what is poisonous?
That's the myth, guys. So many people want to use the word poison, and the fact of the matter is we don't have poisonous snakes because our snakes are venomous. They do contain a toxin. When you get down to defining poisonous versus venomous, each of those are really describing the mode of delivery. So they're both toxins, but how is that toxin being delivered? That's what those words mean. So venomous snake, Ben, would be?
Yeah, so let's look at the difference between venomous and poisonous. I usually love the example poison ivy because most people know what poison ivy is. So the poison ivy plant, if you were to touch that plant, you're going to get the oil from that plant, and it can cause a reaction on your skin. And that reaction is coming from the poison, right? So it is a poisonous plant. You can also take that plant and light it on fire. Some people burn their fields, pastures, whatever, and they may burn that plant. And when they do, they can inhale it. And as they inhale it, they're going to get the poison in their lungs because it is a poison. Same way if you were to eat it. Don't eat it. Don't ever try it. But if you were to eat it and get in your gut, it can definitely make you sick because it's a poisonous plant.
Yeah, if somebody tells you if you eat a baby poison ivy leaf that it'll make you immune to poison ivy.
Has anyone ever done that to you, Brian?
Somebody might have tried to pull that on me one time.
Well, good. I'm glad you didn't try it. But, if we take a snake, let's say that it is a venomous snake, and you throw it on a fire and you smell that, you're not going to get sick. Mm-mm. If you go up and touch that snake, again, if it doesn't bite you, but you just touching it, your skin on its back, on touching it, you're not going to get sick. In the same way, if you were to eat it, a lot of people do eat snake. If you cook that snake and eat it, it's not going to make you sick because it's not a poisonous thing. It's not a poisonous animal. And so that's why it makes me shudder, and that's why when people ask me the question, is this a poisonous snake, I don't even want to identify it for them yet because I want them to truly understand that no.
Yeah, it's just incorrect use of a word.
Correct.
By definition, they're not using that word correctly.
And truth matters, Brian.
It does.
It does.
So to define venom, which is going to be what these snakes are, a venom is something that's injected. So there's venomous spiders, scorpions, wasps, bees, those things that are using a spine, a quill, or a fang to inject the toxin. That is venomous. So if a snake that is venomous bites you with its fangs, those fangs are hollow, kind of like a straw. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a gland above them that has the toxin, the venom held in it, and muscles around those glands. So as they bite, muscles contract, they push it through those fangs and inject it into whatever they're biting, their prey, or if they're using it as a defense, something that's preying on them.
Right, and they have a purpose, period. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of people see a snake and they're going to kill that snake. If it's in your home, if you're eradicating those snakes in your home, I completely get it. But outside of your home, I think it's very important to let them be, let them go. And that's why we also get the second question. I know Brian gets this a lot of, hey, is this a venomous snake? How do I know if it's a venomous
Yeah.
snake? What does that look like?
And there are some things you can do. The best thing is to learn the venomous snakes in your area, their patterns, their colors, to actually learn to be able to identify them. But if you haven't gotten that far or don't have the resources to do that, some things to look for are going to be the eyes. First of all, a non-venomous snake has round black pupils. A venomous snake is going to have what we call a cat eye. It's going to have that vertical kind of slit pupil in their eye. That's a sign that it's venomous. Also, our venomous snakes that we have are pit vipers. So they have a pit in their head that is their sensory gland that they use for finding prey and striking. And that kind of creates that triangle shape to their head. So if they kind of have that triangle broad, not really a pinhead, if it's a triangle shape, that's a good sign that's a venomous snake as well, and that you should stay away from it.
Yeah. But if you have to get that close to see all of that, you're probably still in striking distance. So don't do it. That's
Right.
why the coloration is so important. Learn what that snake color
that's the
looks
best
like,
way
the
at the
pattern
end of
of
the day.
their.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then with the venomous snake, the next question we get asked a lot of, what do you do if you get bit by a snake? How toxic's the venom? How long do you have? As a American Red Cross Wilderness First Aid instructor, this is what they teach. This is what I would teach you if you were bit by a venomous snake: is first identify where you were bit and what does it look like. So do you have one hole, two holes, no holes? If someone yells, "I got bit by a snake," I'm going to look at it. If there are no holes, then I'm going to assume it was a non-venomous snake and roll on with life. And with that being that anytime you're bitten by any kind of animal, you need to keep it clean. You need to go get it cleaned.
Well, let me ask you this with that question.
Mm-hmm.
Do non-venomous snakes have teeth?
They absolutely do. All snakes have teeth.
All snakes have teeth.
That's right. All snakes have teeth. And those teeth they use to do what with, Brian?
They can bite. You ever been bit by a snake?
I haven't. Have you?
I have been bit by a snake. Do you remember that dang Cleopatra, that ball python? She was just probably the edgiest snake that we had. She got me one time, and it bled. I mean, she had teeth. It bled. Obviously non-venomous. So really, your first aid action is to clean it. Soap and water, cover it, bandage it, keep it clean, because they can get infected. Because we have more non-venomous snakes in the world than venomous, more people get bit by non-venomous, and they can get dirty. So there are actually more hospitalized issues with non-venomous snake bites than venomous snake bites because of how dirty their mouths are. And they are going to break skin. There is going to be an open wound and blood, and bacteria is present in their mouths. I mean, they eat mice and rodents and nasty living things. So
absolutely,
there's bacteria present there to cause an infection. Gotta keep it clean.
And they're going to use those teeth to hold on to their prey. I mean, that's why they need them.
And it hurts when one bites you. It feels like a pinch and a prick, and they have teeth that are kind of angled back in their mouth, so when they get the prey in their mouth, it keeps it in there, and it's actually going to kind of be forcing it towards the back of their mouth, so they can get it ate and get it swallowed down their throat.
Right, exactly. And that's on the non-venomous side. On the venomous side, being bit, you definitely want to look for, are there any fang marks, and also for that swelling. People react differently to different poisons. There's people that is allergic to peanut butter, and there's people that's not. So if you've never been bit by a venomous snake, you don't know how you're going to react to it. So you want to make sure you're always keeping those people calm, keeping yourself calm, and if you need to, call 911. But do go get help. Go to the hospital, have them check it out. But again, you can first identify. Yeah, don't slice it open, but look for the fang marks, look for the swelling, and then if you need to, call 911. Make sure you're still washing that wound always, and really keeping that person calm, keeping that wound really below the heart if you can, to keep that from pumping. Because back in the day, Brian's talking about slicing, and where that's coming from is back in the day they used to have the suction kits, and American Red Cross does not teach that. And inside that kit is a razor blade. And that is a bad deal. I mean, you're starting to add more wounds. You're lacerating yourself. You're causing more problem with no gain. I mean, it's not fixing it. So even the suction, they're just saying just don't do it. So don't buy the kits. They're not needed. With the venomous snakes we have here in the Ozarks, you have time. However, you may have allergic reaction to that. So you have to be very, very careful. But at the end of the day, you do have time to go seek help. Stay calm and watch it. Watch that area.
You mentioned the venomous snakes we have here in the Ozarks, which is going to kind of be a general Midwest. It's going to be a lot of what is that local fauna of snake. Here we have 49 species of snakes in Missouri. 6 of those are going to be considered venomous.
Mm-hmm.
So you got the copperhead, you have the water moccasin or cottonmouth,
Mm-hmm.
you have the rest are all rattlesnakes.
Right.
You've got the timber rattler, the pygmy rattler, then you've got the eastern Massasauga and the prairie Massasauga.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the prairie Massasauga is very, very geographically focused in one area up there around Kansas City. They're endangered. There's not a whole lot of them left. The eastern Massasauga is actually considered what's called extirpated, which means it's not an extinct species, but it is geographically extinct. So, do we have maybe a few left in Missouri? Yes, but they're pretty well extinct from the area where they consider to live. And those are the venomous snakes that we have here in Missouri.
Right, that's good. That reminds me of some of the programs we used to teach, and kids would always say that snakes hiss. You know, what sound does a snake make? And they're like,
Yeah.
I know that I've never heard a snake hiss, especially around here, but I think it comes from the rattlesnakes that you're talking about, of that tail rattling, hitting the leaf. Again, a myth would be that they do hiss. You're not going to walk up on and hear them hissing.
Yeah.
I don't hear it.
Yeah.
But there are some animals that mimic that rattle too. Again, sounds like a hiss.
There's also a species that is considered non-venomous that if you were to get real down to the exact definition would be considered venomous.
What is it?
So the hognose, you ever heard of the eastern hognose?
That's an awesome snake.
They're really cool. Their defense mechanism, they cobra out, they flatten out their head and almost look like a cobra, but we do not have cobras in the United States.
No hissing
unless
cobras
it's
here?
in a zoo or somebody's pet, which don't know why you'd want a pet cobra. But anyway, they have what's called the Duvernay's gland. So it does produce a venom. Now this venom is not toxic enough to really cause any kind of symptoms in a human. What it does, it kind of when they're eating prey, it kind of subdues their prey and helps them to kill it and swallow it. Mm-hmm. They also don't have enough muscles around that Duvernay's gland to actually fully inject. So while they are venomous, it's not one that we need to be worried about. So they're actually put into the non-venomous class when listing out those snakes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So why is it even important? We just defined what venom is, talked about venomous snakes, talked about poison. Why is it even important? Does it matter if somebody asks? If I ask you, Ben, is this snake poisonous or not? You know what I'm asking, right?
Right. Well, truth is so important to us. That's why we're having Myth Mondays. So truth is so important. And there's consequences in that. There's both good and bad. And, one example of why it could be bad, that people are calling something poisonous that's not, could be their line of work. So, if, as you as a biologist in that field, if I was to tell you to go collect poisonous snakes, what's the first thing that comes to your mind if you're going to have to go collect poisonous snakes?
I'm going to put gloves on because I know when I touch them, I'm going to get poison on my hands.
Right.
Like if it were a poison dart frog is actually poison. If you touch a poison dart frog, you're going to get sick.
Right.
And cool fact about them, they don't actually make their own poison. Do you know that?
I've heard that.
So
explain.
They're eating insects, and their prey, what they're eating is actually where they're getting their toxin. Their body's not creating it, and then they secrete that through their skin and makes them poisonous. So if you told me there was a poisonous snake, as a biologist, I'm going to put gloves on if I have to go touch it so I'm not getting poisoned. But if you meant venom, what's going to happen to me?
Right. Now you're
going to get bit through that glove, and it doesn't matter.
Right. Exactly. Are there any poisonous snakes in the world?
Supposedly there's one. I've never seen it, but supposedly in Japan, a Japanese grass snake supposedly has a gland that it stores and secretes poison.
So you need to wear a glove to touch something like that.
And then it's getting that from a toad that it eats.
Right. But the whole point of that is that you're identifying that's poisonous, so you want to put PPE, your protective personal protective equipment on to touch that animal. Yeah. Whereas if it still bites you, now you're getting thumped by a venomous snake.
And if you watch, hunting shows, fishing shows, or survival shows, you'll hear well-respected and well-known names say poisonous snakes. And that's just kind of discrediting to me,
It does break my heart because they're sharing a lot of truth. Even when I go to purchase books, that's the number one thing I turn to. I turn to the index, I look up poison, and I want to see if they're going to call a snake poisonous or venomous.
Right.
Because the moment that I see that they're calling it a poisonous snake, I close it back, I put it on the shelf, and I'm like, well,
it's good.
If that's wrong, what else might be wrong in that book?
Yeah,
so,
and we're not in the business of naming names, but we see it, and it is kind of disheartening and it's discrediting, and we want them to be sharing truth through everything that they do. So hopefully you guys are getting this. Hopefully you guys understand what venom and poison are now. So just kind of summarize, poison is something that is ingested, it's touched, it's sniffed, inhaled, and the venom is something that is a toxin that is injected through a fang or a quill or a spike or something of that sort. So just to summarize that, I hope you guys understand. I hope this podcast brings value and understanding to you. We're so thankful that you guys have listened, and we hope that you'll join us next week for Myth Monday. And until then, we hope you find a way to spend some time outdoors. Thank you for listening to the Meant to Be Outdoors podcast, hosted by Brian Hoffmeyer and Ben Brandell. Please help us by subscribing. Also, follow along on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.